Good morning, everyone. My name is Izabella Grundova. I am here from DG CLIMA, from the European Commission, and from the Unit on Climate Governance, Planning and Mainstreaming. And me particularly, I am responsible for the governance regulation of the Energy Union and climate action from the legal perspective. Um, Officially, it's a regulation on governance of the Energy Union and climate action. It is a regulation or entire mechanism framework for energy and climate that was adopted in 2018 in the EU for member states, and it follows up on the monitoring and reporting mechanism regulation that was in place previously, and that is basically transposing the international commitments for the EU and its member states. Also, some of participants here, particularly Georgia and Moldova, will also hear about this for not for the first time, because it's a framework that was adopted in the context of energy community. um, and so in adapted version, so it allows for the contracting parties of energy community to have this in their national systems. And it's also something that combines together planning, reporting, and then monitoring. So it has several steps. Mm, it was adopted with an aim to actually put together the energy and climate together. So as I was speaking about the previous framework, monitoring and reporting regulation, that related only to the climate side, so to inventories, policies and measures and projections, and the related reporting that is then important for member states to have compiled for the submission to the UN. This combines also with the energy, which is of course necessary interlinked, and allows member states to create plans, and based on that then report to the progress of the plans, and which then results in assessment by the Commission. And it is based on the objectives of Energy Union. These objectives of Energy Union can be separated or differed into 5 dimensions. It's energy security, it's energy efficiency, it's decarbonization. Under decarbonization dimension, we can imagine both greenhouse gas emissions reduction as well as renewable energy uptake, and research, innovation, and competitiveness. So this governance regulation and its entire framework allows member states to reach objectives, targets, and contributions of these energy union dimensions. I'll go back to it more into detail later. It also streamlines planning and reporting, allowing to reach the targets set by the member states and the EU. Allows for investors certainty and predictability, because of the plans that the member states create, that allows investors to see what is planned for the following 10 years. It synchronizes cycles with Paris Agreement, so all the reporting timeline is based on the Paris Agreement, and allows member states to collect the particular information and data needed for then biannual reporting on the Paris Agreement, and ultimately to reach the climate neutrality objective. This is something that was adopted in the EU last year in July through European climate law, where the EU committed to reach climate neutrality in 2050. And this is also and hence this climate neutrality objective was also inserted into this entire planning, monitoring, and reporting system on the governance regulation. Um, so this is the context. I'm trying to go further. Here. So governance regulation and the entire framework is based on 3 main levels. First is planning. So member states create their national integrated energy and climate plans that cover following decade. Based on that, they report on progress towards objectives, targets, and contributions set in these integrated energy and climate plans. And then European Commission monitors the progress, assesses the progress, and also if there is a lack of progress or lack of ambition identified, European Commission also issues recommendations for these member states of how to improve this progress or ambition. When it comes to the plans themselves, it's a place where member states provide for their objectives, targets, and contributions, as mentioned. These would naturally be those that a party to UN set as their national determined contributions when speaking of the greenhouse gas reduction part. For the EU context, it's a bit different because EU submitted common national determined contributions, and so the member states themselves contribute to this union-wide target until 2030. But member states in these plans can also outline other greenhouse gas reduction targets. So besides those that are set on the EU level, we have mandatory greenhouse gas reduction targets in the effort sharing area, for example. Besides that, they can also set their economy-wide greenhouse gas reduction targets. But besides greenhouse gas, this would also relate to other objectives under the other 5 dimensions. So for renewables uptake, for energy efficiency improvement, for energy security, and others. So the plan includes these objectives and outlines policies and measures that are needed to reach these objectives. And then they have to provide of how these or impact assessment of how these policies and measures will reach the objectives outlined in the plan. These plans were for the first time in the EU submitted for the draft ones in December 2018. Subsequently, for the final ones in the end of 2019. You can think of the fact that this was before there was this climate neutrality objective set in place in the EU level. So this is something that is not reflected in the plans that were adopted, the first plans that were adopted in 2019. And as mentioned, these plans cover the 10 years perspective, are meant to be in line with long-term strategies, and are meant to be updated in a halfway to 2030, to the end of the decade. So this means that next year, by the end of June 2023, member states will update these national energy and climate plans, and they will reflect the increased ambition as well as the climate neutrality objective in these plans, and consequently also in their policies and measures that need to be implemented to reach these objectives and targets. These plans are also consulted. Well, it is important that the entire process is iterative with public and also with neighboring member states to allow for regional cooperation, and also with Commission, who, in case that it is identified that the ambition is low or the progress is slow, will issue recommendations. So this is the outline of the plans. As I mentioned, national objectives and targets per each of the dimension, and corresponding policies and measures leading to attain these objectives and targets. And the plans then also include analytical basis, so a description of current situation and the reference and projections, and also impact assessment of the policies and measures. Quickly, these plans need to also comply with the Aarhus Convention, to which all member states are parties. So these plans, during preparation, they should be discussed and consulted with public when all options are still open, and take into account all the comments by the public. And this principle also applies to long-term strategies. As well as member states should establish multi-level climate and energy dialogue for engagement with all stakeholders throughout the planning, but also implementation of this plan. So throughout the 10 years period. This includes public and private institutions and stakeholders. And this is also a principle that applies to long-term strategies, and should identify opportunities for regional cooperation and consult neighboring member states. This also allows that if it is more efficient for member states to actually set target or attain a target or set a target together with neighboring member state and then progress towards this common target, it is also something that is possible for these to be included in these national energy and climate plans. They are meant to be the main strategy for energy and climate. Here is a quick timeline where you see that the member states publish or prepare their draft plans. They are meant to be consulted with public on a level of multi-level dialogue, applying regional cooperation. Commission assesses these plans, issues possible recommendations, and then member states publish the final plans, which was done for the first time at the end of 2019, and then already in January 2020, member states were required to publish their long-term strategies. I'll get to long-term strategies a bit later. And for the assessment, so the commission assesses these plans when they are in the draft stage, as mentioned, issues country-specific recommendations, and commission also assesses these plans when they are in the final stage. So in order in order to see whether the objectives and targets and contributions in these plans are sufficient for the collective achievement of the energy union objectives, including also the greenhouse gas reduction target slash national determined contributions, and also whether these plans comply with the legal provisions, of course, under governance regulation. Governance regulation also provides for the legal framework for long-term strategies, which implements the international requirements, international commitments, but goes a bit more into details, that sets a bit of a higher standard to what is required under Paris Agreement. And for the first time, member states were meant to submit them in January 2020. Then second long-term strategy should be prepared by member states by January 2029, and it covers the perspective of 30 years. And in a case that this long-term strategy is outdated in view of the ambition, it should be also updated every 5 years. Commission also prepared its own long-term strategy in 2019, and it also included analysis covering various scenarios and their implications on the carbon budget. And then for the reporting, reporting towards progress of the objectives and targets of the energy union dimensions, including the greenhouse gas reduction one. It is though across all 5 dimensions. The reporting is based on biennial consequence as a main sequence as a main rule, and this is also in line with biennial reports under international commitments. Annual reporting continues where it is required on the international level. So this relates, of course, to the greenhouse gas inventory reporting for member states. There's also certain energy-related reporting, such as minimum stock of crude oil and others from the energy side. In the EU, member state report these integrated progress reports through a platform to the Commission. It is so-called e-reporting platform. It facilitates the communication between the member states and the Commission, but also promotes cooperation between member states themselves, and facilitates public access, because what is submitted, unless confidential information, it's something that is public for public scrutiny as well. And as a result of this reporting, Commission prepares annually State of Energy Union report, where in this report it assesses the progress towards these objectives, targets, and contributions, and possibly issues recommendations where it is identified that the progress is too slow. The biennial reporting could be separated into two main streams. It is progress reporting on implementation of the national energy and climate plans, and then integrated progress reports on climate. I will come back to the climate ones a bit later. When it comes to the implementation of the national energy and climate plans, it will in the EU. This is something that will start only next year for the first time. So by 15 March 2023, member states will have to prepare these integrated reports, including both energy and climate progress towards the set objectives and targets in their national energy and climate plans, and also how they are implementing and progressing with the implementation of policies and measures to get to these objective targets and contributions. Also how they progressed in establishing the multi-level climate and energy dialogue, in the case this was established. Also information on adaptation. This is something to reflect the mitigation co-benefits of the adaptation measures. This is which is also important under Paris Agreement and highlighted many times. Also estimates on impact on air quality and emission of air pollutants, and information then of how the member state addressed the recommendations by the Commission. There are also items on national objectives to phase out energy subsidies, in particular for fossil fuels, but also other energy specific points. And these progress reports are then submitted and prepared by member states every 2 years. Again, this helps them to compile their information needed for the biennial transparency reporting that will come up on the Paris Agreement, and will also allow to realize where there's need for further actions. When it comes to the climate side, this is something that was existing already under the previous monitoring and reporting mechanism, and reflects the international commitments fully. By 15 March 2021, and then every 2 years thereafter. So biennial reporting, member states prepare these integrated reports on policies and measures, where they also report on the objective of each of the policy and measure, status of implementation, indicators used. It goes beyond what is under the international framework, where this is not only the key policies and measures that the member state identifies, but it relates to, or it requires member state to report and to prepare information per each policy and measure that relates to reaching the greenhouse gas objectives and targets. And they also prepare reports on projections of greenhouse gas emissions by source and removals by sinks, organized by gas in a similar way as under the international commitments. Member states also prepare sort of a report to describe how their system for policies and measures and projection works. Again, something that is also required on the international level. I would like to explain also the fact that this doesn't mean that member states have to prepare two different reports for EU and then for the under UNFCCC, but basically what they prepare for the EU, they also report to UNFCCC. Then there's also implementing legislation for laying down the rules for this detailed reporting. In addition to that, there's biennial reporting on adaptation, where member states sum up and inform on their climate change adaptation planning and strategies. Every year, member states report on the use of auctioning revenues, the revenues coming or gained through the European Union emission trading system under the ETS directive. And also provide every year for information on support to developing countries. Again, information submitted also under international requirements. And for annual reporting, this is what stands, the greenhouse gas inventory reporting as it was already before governance regulation. Member states report annually on the approximated greenhouse gas inventories, which is always X minus 1, greenhouse gas inventories X minus 2. Also, they report preliminary data by 15 January and the final data by 15 March. And in between, there is a QAQC iterative process between the Commission supporting EEA, Europe Environmental Agency, and the member states. And also, member states report annually on energy-related information, as I mentioned in the previous slide, minimum stocks of crude oil and petroleum, and safety of offshore oil and gas operations. As far as I know, this is not information that is sent then to UNFCCC. Again, member states have to also prepare a report describing of how their national inventory system works, international commitment, and also EU, the Commission prepares of how the Union system works, because when member states submit their national greenhouse gas inventories, the Commission prepares aggregated Union inventory that is then a Union inventory report that is also then submitted to UNFCCC as EU is party itself. Again, detailed information in implementing legislation. And as a final step of this three-level framework, Commission's assessment of progress. Indeed, this is assessment that is published every year by the end of October, and Commission assesses the progress at union level towards meeting the energy union objectives in those 5 dimensions. Until 2030, it is also particularly focused on the 2030 energy and climate targets that are set by the sectorial legislation, but also progress by each member state towards meeting its national plans, objectives, targets, and contributions, and the implementing policies and measures, also implementing aviation on global climate, and there are also other items that are reflected in this assessment. And it also assesses whether the sufficient progress was made towards meeting the commitments under UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement, commitments under effort sharing regulation, and land use change and forestry regulation, which is a sectoral legislation setting mandatory greenhouse gas reduction targets for member states, and objectives set out in the national plans. And we are fulfilling targets for period 2020 to 2030 in the climate field. And on the basis of these, this assessment is compiled and prepared on the basis of the National Energy Climate Progress Reports, which reflect the implementation of the national energy and climate plans, and other information reported, so include inventories, projections, policies and measures, adaptation information, etc. And this assessment is called State of the Energy Union Report, submitted annually, also publicly. And quickly, the Commission is not doing all of this by itself. Of course, there is a European Environmental Agency that is absolutely crucial for compiling the Union inventory and the Union approximated inventory, also performing quality assurance and quality control checks on the member states' inventories and member states' information on projections and policies and measures, preparing estimates for missing data in a case that member states does not submit complete data, compiling data for the then use of the assessment by the Commission, and also disseminating information through respective websites. And the Commission is also then required to report on all of this to Climate Change Committee and Energy Union Committee under governance regulation. And quick summary of how the entire planning, reporting and monitoring system works. You can see final plans submitted at the end of 2019. Then member state prepared a long-term strategy. First progress report on the implementation of national energy and climate plans comes in 2023, and then every 2 years after. What is not reflected, what is not reflected in this timeline is then the biannual reporting on the climate, so policies and measures, projections, and annual greenhouse gas inventories that started in 2021 under this governance regulation. And then the biannual reporting on climate is then time-wise the same as the progress reporting.